exactly sure who this guy is, but it was giving me some Reek vibes from Game of Thrones, someone raised as an animal and warped from not thinking like a human, but just as a servant, and honestly that probably spells trouble for BOJJI and company, or any of the characters really, so that's kind of an exciting cliffhanger. But before we jump into this crazy episode, we do gotta give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video. We'll do that real quick and then we'll get back into this review. Bokksu is a gourmet journey across Japan that every single month you'll receive a unique assortment of Japanese treats and tea pairings straight to your front door. Every month you not only receive a different theme, but with said theme, the snacks inside will be different. With this month I had the pleasure of digging into the Hokkaido holiday box, which anyone would appreciate this winter season. And to make it even better, Bokksu makes such a perfect and memorable gift for anyone in your life who appreciates Japanese snacks and culture, especially during a time where people aren't able to travel as easily as they would like. And actually, not only would you be gifting them Bokksu, which is already awesome, but also you would technically be gifting them the chance to win free tickets to Japan, because Bokksu is having a giveaway. They will be picking one lucky winner to win a free set of tickets, and anyone who is subscribed before December 31st is automatically entered. I'll include a link in my description so you can check out the terms and conditions and other methods of entry. So if this doesn't hit your last minute shopping, I don't know what will. Each month you receive a cultural guide that details each item's origins and ingredients, so you don't have to worry about those pesky allergies of what you're eating, and you're always going to know where each item came from, as all the snacks come from different snack makers across Japan. So you gotta do yourself a favor and use my link and coupon code located in the description below, save yourself some money with my 10% discount code on your first Bokksu subscription, while supporting the channel, and soon enough you too are going to be waiting for that next Bokksu shipment just like I do. This episode just made me come out saying, once again, how much I love BOJJI'S character arc and development, how much I love Kage being a part of his kind of moral compass, and how I'm really glad they committed to Despa not being a con artist. There was a moment very briefly in this episode where we saw the people who were attacking them in the tavern there. I was like, please don't tell me that was bullshit, because if that was bullshit, then what was the point of this, right? But the fact that even though they were planted there to attack, everything we saw physically with BOJJI knocking them out was true, and that is a giant sigh of relief. Because all throughout this episode, I was thinking to myself, Despa easily could have been written in such a different way, and I feel like most people would have written him as just a con artist. Here's a deaf kid, can read lips, as we learned that the snakes are actually the one who taught him how to read lips as kind of like repayment, alongside the agility kind of training, which we already knew about the speed training coming from the snakes. It's very much been implied, but it's nice to see how he learned how to read lips as well. But to have this episode really commit to the idea that he maybe is a laughingstock at times, he can throw a good punch, but he can't really take a punch at the same time. But to see how the training, it makes so much sense. I've seen a lot of people speculate that a rapier or some sort of very thin blade most likely was BOJJI'S weapon, because that's probably the only thing he could wield. Even like a magical staff, that probably would be too much for him, but something that pretty much can fly in the wind Zoro style, I mean, it kind of makes sense that that would be his weapon. But there's definitely a lot of questions I had about how he was able to do certain things, and the one thing that doesn't or hasn't been revealed just yet was how he destroyed that rock. At least that's kind of what I assume, because in this episode Despa mentions how there's something that he didn't reveal and probably won't reveal all too often. Maybe we'll only get to see it one time, and I think that's the trick of how he destroyed that rock. But the idea of using your opponent's own force against them and matched with his speed, despite not hitting all that hard, the force of them coming at him and hitting the weak spots to basically either cause a concussion or knock them out, knock them on their ass, is a very clever way to compensate for a lack of physical strength, going into that kind of speed build, that rogue build that many people were hoping he'd go. But the biggest question I had was when I saw him what seemed to be a stab motion. I was like, okay, if you're stabbing a fool, how in the actual hell did he get knocked out and not die? Because that seemingly was what he was trained to do. Though we also get the confirmation that his skill set can kill or save a life. Either one will work, and I think that would be an interesting piece of development if BOJJI ever decides to take a life, because right now it doesn't seem like something he would do. But the idea of when you hit certain nerve points, that will cause pain. But as we saw with Despa, he stabbed his hand, he was freaking out, but he's like, no, this doesn't actually hurt. So the idea that you can actually basically stop blood from flowing and hitting certain spots without killing them, you could also hit the vital organs. It's an interesting way to let BOJJI make up for a lack of physical strength, having ways to, even if he can't physically hurt people, he can use their own force against them, hand-to-hand style, or with his weapon, he can easily take care of fools. And that's a pretty interesting piece of news, I think, because I think there was a lot of skepticism if BOJJI was actually being trained properly or not, and I don't really think I had any worries myself, but I could understand why people may be questioning Despa, because how the hell is this kid going to be physically strong enough without some magical enhancements? But the fact that they didn't go magical and just pure physical, I think is awesome. And to see how proud Kage is after being probably the biggest skeptic in the episode, and understandably so. Despa, though, is just such a great character, because that moment where there was kind of criticisms and BOJJI immediately started looking down at his feet, he walked over to him and said, is every time someone's going to look down at you, if you're going to look at your feet, basically you're not going to make it far, because everyone in your life is going to look down on you. Don't let that get to you. And I thought it was such a great piece of advice, which is why I was initially feeling betrayed when I saw that he hired these fools, but the fact that it wasn't like a play knockout or anything like that, it was all true, and the fact that they even recognized that BOJJI was so strong that they literally thought they were about to get knocked out is absolutely awesome, I have to say. Just so cool to see all the different pieces at play and what's truly going down here. I think it's just so interesting to see BOJJI, especially in the moment which was probably my favorite point in the episode, where he started to question Queen Hilling, because he started questioning, like, you know, who's responsible, who can he not trust in, and we see three figures pop up and they all have this very evil grin, and the fact that he was thinking that maybe Queen Hilling is someone he couldn't trust, and that Kage called him a coward, and the idea of like, you have to start trusting in people, and then he actually starts properly reflecting on how she treated him, healed him, was a mother to him, and immediately felt so bad he physically wounded himself. Those are the moments that really shape a character, because it's very easy to make it seem like BOJJI is the cinnamon roll, he never does anything wrong, and he's completely flawless, which, don't get me wrong, I do think that, but in that moment of him doubting Queen Hilling, I was like, BOJJI, my man, don't do this to me. Like, you have to understand, even if originally you thought bad, she really did have your best intentions in mind, and the idea that he recognized it after Kage's kind of lecture, I thought was great, because I thought it was going to be more of a cliffhanger, like Kage criticizes, BOJJI runs off, and then the anime community debates if Kage was in the right or wrong. But I mean, there's no denying it after BOJJI's resolve. Something that's quite interesting is with my man. I mean, it's interesting because when initially we saw him about to get killed, and clearly the snakes save him, Bebin pops up, and it's kind of interesting because Bebin's a character who clearly has BOJJI's best interest in mind, but it also always felt like Bebin was very much for Prince Daida for the throne. And the interesting idea that is he doesn't want BOJJI on the throne, but he also recognizes that BOJJI is going to be someone who can save a lot of people, as the snakes themselves say, and the fact that it's seeming more and more likely that the snakes' prediction that BOJJI will be the one to save Daida, from the, Daida even recognizing it inside his own internal psyche, clearly the king also recognizing that BOJJI is the most worthy, it does feel like we're shaping it up for probably BOJJI to be on the throne. But at the same time, he doesn't have to. Like, he could be more of a hero character, but I think everything we've seen with how his heart operates, he is someone who would give his life for people, even the people who talk shit to him. So it's interesting that they very much establish a king morale, a king ability, even though he's very different from his father. He's not physically insane, but he has the skills, I think, to really be someone who people could admire but also fear. Not initially, but once they see what he's able to do in battle, I mean, it's hard not to admit that this kid has some skills. I mean, I was absolutely blown away in this episode, from the animation with the fight scene to just the revelations of what's going down, the emotional high points to the hilarious moments. I think the funniest moment was when Despa was talking about how you can criticize, but you can't criticize him. And it's like, what this man just like, he just has such backwards logic, and I love it, but I'm happy about Despa. I really, initially was worried, and then I bought into him, and then this episode brought back those worries to then finally bury them 6 feet under, saying, no, his training is legit, even Bebin recognized it, and it's interesting that BOJJI's completion of his training is actually reaching that far out there, so it'll be interesting to see what he does next. I mean, the story is clearly just getting going. We still have a lot of episodes left for this season, and I really do feel like they'll probably wrap up the first part of the story with its 23 episodes, and then, I mean, at that point, I gotta jump into the manga because I'm going to want more, and it just is something that I feel like I'm gonna have to start collecting as well. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on this week's episode of Ranking of King's favorite moment, and where do you think it's gonna go from here? Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.